Hello. I am live. Should be. Can anybody hear me? Anybody here yet? Just want to make sure. Let's have a look. It's 5 of you according to the numbers. So, yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome. Finally, been a long time coming. So let's have a bit of fun. Just want to make sure you all jump in first. And I've got some stuff going on here. Got some sushi. I've got some sake as well. So I'm gonna be drinking a little bit and eating as well. So just want to wait for you all to jump in and start talking. Okay, that's the first one. Hello. Okay, hang on a second. Oh shit. The exemplars are too big. Can I wear both of these by any chance? Is it gonna work? Yeah, it's working. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. I have another one of my daimyos jumping in as well. Just wait for him to show up. It's gonna be Harry. Yeah, happy holidays, Diego. Merry Christmas, man. Thanks for coming. What time is it over at yours right now? Because it's obviously it's like 11 p.m. here, so. Hello.
How's it going? Actually, I should get my Santa hat. There we are.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, see, I've got these ones here as well, so. I've got that stuff here as well. Gonna be drinking. Gonna be doing some sushi live as well, so it's all good.
Nice.
So gonna be seducing people with food, and we're gonna be getting a bit tipsy and just talking shit and well, just usual Christmas stuff as always, you know.
Nice.
So what time is it, Harry? Is it like morning or something?
Yep, 10 o'clock in the morning. Christmas, Boxing Day, so after Christmas.
Yeah, for you it's Boxing Day already, yeah, because for me it's Boxing Day tomorrow, and I'm working 9 hours as well. Great stuff.
Wow. Yeah,
all those 9 hours are gonna it's gonna count to something anyway in it, so it's always good. So
get holiday pay.
What's that?
You get holiday pay or like bonus rates for the season or anything like that?
I don't think so, no, because technically the only time you were supposed to get, I'm actually not sure. I never heard of any, but since it's the end of the month, I might actually be able to see on the layout when I get my payment slip to see if, because a lot of times he doesn't tell you anything, he just kind of includes it there anyway. He just says like, yeah, like by the way, this you got this. I'm like, oh, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, great.
So pour some drinks. See how that goes. Don't want to do it too much because I haven't tried this one before.
Don't mind this. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, go for it.
Just gonna quickly. No, I shouldn't boil the jug. I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it because then it'll just be like this giant droning noise. So.
Dude, this is actually quite good. It's a plum liquor in it, so it's quite nice.
Nice.
Cheers. Kampai. Whatever. Right. Let's grab one of this one. So I want to start with this. I don't know if anybody can see this. Let me just see if I can lift it up. Yeah, salmon sashimi.
Nice.
Oh. So what's been going on, Harry? You've been working a lot lately, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Doing both work and study and and a whole heap of stuff right now, and also obviously working on Operation Black Mesa a lot. And and obviously getting ready for the wedding next year. So that's
congrats.
That takes a lot of time. So yeah, it's did
you book the ceremony, right? Did you already book the place where it has a bathroom window in case you need to jump out? Because you never know.
No, I definitely don't think I need to jump out. It's yeah, we pick a good church and a good reception venue, which is actually pretty cool. It looks like a castle, so actually looks like Hogwarts Hall. So yeah, it's
Every time somebody mentions castles, I always think of Shadiversity.
yeah,
We need to get him on as well, don't we?
yeah. He went and built one. It's amazing. It's
Yeah, the guy just built one in his backyard. Like, what the fuck?
oh, it's a great thing about Chad. It's like this guy walks the walk. Tells you how castles are built, and he shows you by building one. Oh, it's great.
I think it takes the whole, what's the best way to put it? I want to say craziness, but the boldness of Australians, if you will, to a whole new level. At least according to my gauge, because like obviously I have a very limited familiarity with the culture, but you tell me.
Well, you definitely get some that are like that. Vast majority ain't though. It's it's kind of strange. Like you get a really, really strong urban, non-urban divide where you get really crazy ingenuity from country people, and like all these inventive gadgets in their farms and all these really amazing systems going. Because you don't really get many shops out there. It's but yeah, in remotely urbanized areas like big towns, everyone goes to the supermarket. Everyone just walks into the main two big supermarket chains, just buys their stuff pre-made. They don't even cook their own food. It's like they can't cook. They can't do any homewares. They have to get it all brought in pre-made. Like they even have pre-made, chicken teriyaki because they don't know how to make teriyaki sauce.
Technically, we have a pre-made, but it's like pre-made. It's packed up for us to cook when we get it at work because we have to serve it quickly. It's a fast food kind of thing, so we don't have time to, do it from scratch.
That makes sense.
If we were probably like a restaurant, more like an evening type of restaurant, rather, if you know what I mean, where you have to cook it and serve it immediately, like that sort of thing. I would imagine it would be quite different because a lot of things that we cook, they are very fast food oriented.
Oh yeah,
and
same here. Same here. Yeah, people don't like waiting.
Dude, like almost, I don't know, what was it? Yesterday, closed a bit early. The shop was closing at 7:30. It's Christmas Eve. Normally, you would sit down with your family members, right? You'd cook something and eat something. What the fuck are you doing in a takeaway restaurant at that time?
Yeah. We actually have our
Deliveroo. Do you have Deliveroo? Deliveroo company.
We do,
you have it as well. Yeah. So you know what they are basically. Yeah. So we get like a whole bunch of them like towards the end, and the order just like the buzz meter. When it beeps whenever the order comes in. It's like the last half an hour is like like it just like keeps ringing. I'm like, people, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you not cooking at home? It's Christmas, I can understand any other day, but like, what the fuck,
Yeah, like here, everyone has a kitchen at home. Like, there's almost no home that don't have kitchens in them. No one knows how to cook. Not a single person. It's unreal. It's just they even have KFC and McDonald's will be open all throughout Christmas.
Great.
Yeah.
Like, first thing that comes to my mind, Christmas. Oh yeah, McDonald's, KFC. Yeah, that's definitely the first thing I could ever think of.
Oh, have you know, in Australia, that's considered high-class fine dining in most areas in urban. I'm serious. It's unreal.
You know what's funny? I'm laughing, but there is something interesting about it. In Russia, in my hometown, in Rostov, it's actually no joke. McDonald's legit makes the best cappuccino and cheapest in the city. And they are actually better than some of the restaurants that make them, like, the coffee shops and like restaurants. They make them better. because they taste better. It's easier, it doesn't feel bitter or anything like that. It's like really smooth and really nice, even without like you don't have to add sugar or anything. And they're cheapest as well. Like to give you a comparison, not that it's gonna make a lot of sense, but let's just say, for argument's sake, any other place you would get it for maybe like 250, maybe sometimes 350 rubles. I think Starbucks is about 300 rubles, maybe plus minus, depends, for a cappuccino. McDonald's, what was it, 100 rubles or something like that. So reduce by 3 times at least. Divide by 3. That's the price, and it's portion size exactly the same cup. Like this typical takeaway cup. So it's great.
Yeah, I will give McDonald's this. They're out the cafes here. They actually do a pretty good job with the coffees as well. I always have mochas. That's it. The best mochas or coffees you can get in Australia are from Vietnamese businesses, because they actually get Vietnamese coffee, and it is so amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like, it tastes like you're drinking caramel. It doesn't even taste like coffee. It just tastes like caramel, but you get caffeinated from it.
Yeah. So you wanna open up the first segment? Well, we kind of didn't really plan it. I just came up with it right now, actually. Let's do the whatever we can remember. The cool paleo discoveries of the year, or whatever you think is like just interesting that you can think of one by one. Let's go.
Oh, geez. Okay, keep in mind, this is because of all the pandemic. My concept of time's really skewed. I think the angel shark, flying shark fossil is pretty cool. Yeah, that giant millipede is a pretty awesome one as well.
What was the other one? Giant millipede.
Yeah, there was a giant millipede. They discovered probably one of the largest land-based arthropods. Apparently, I haven't looked at it myself, but it seems plausible. So they found a humongous monster-sized millipede that's like about 2.5 meters long, I think, something like that. And yeah, they assume it was carnivorous, because how could a plant-eating bug grow so big? Is the logic in the article. But yeah, I should have shared it. Actually, it was pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about the first armored dinosaur from South America, the Stegosaurus, which is also very interesting how it kind of rhymes with Stegosaurus in a certain way, but it's still.
I hate when they do those names. That's the one with the sort of fan-shaped tail, isn't it? That sort of flattens, and yeah, that's so cool. But I think
like
it was only.
It's like a spiked club with flattened slightly.
Yeah, like the what are those Aztec clubs called?
Those ones,
yeah, those ones. Yeah, it's like that. It's amazing. It's in itself, the discovery of that dinosaur, I knew it was only a matter of time, because we have those things, and if we have them, and North America has them, and of course South America is going to have them as well. It's like it's a foregone conclusion, but it's still cool, and it's actually kind of amazing. We get to see some, how they can vary in a place that is very much going to be between these two places, or they probably didn't merge at that point, but yeah, just in its own isolated little pocket, how they can change. Because I think that's what I keep going on about Australian stuff, is because they're one of the most isolated regions throughout the human history. Well, not human history, Earth's history, because God, what am I talking about?
It's still waking up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still waking up. Oh, geez. So I mean, it's still a bit delirious, because you've seen Vicar Dibley, right? The show Vicar Dibley?
Yeah.
And the Vicar Dibley show where the vicar has to go to all these different Christmas lunches and dinners, and has to keep eating, and they keep serving these huge meals. That basically happened to me, and I'm still delirious from it. So, yeah.
Okay. No, I haven't heard of it, but like based on what you're explaining, it sounds like that's quite an adventure.
Yeah, it was. And I thought I was going to skip the lunch because they were going to come for dessert later, and so I had my own lunch, and then lunch was still served. I'm like, oh, how am I going to do this? But yeah, so that anyway, now my brain's back on track. So yeah, it's interesting seeing in the South American one how it can have this really bizarre, novel shape to its tail and body that doesn't really correspond to anything else I've ever heard of. And And just interesting how South America seems to, even back then, form another isolated pocket where things can diverge in weird ways. Because everything else I see in South America is something similar-ish to stuff you see in Australia, maybe Africa to some lesser extent. But yeah, seeing that, it's just like, oh, wow.
Yeah, indeed. Here, popped it up on the message. Apparently, this is the weapon. If the spelling is correct, then that's. I don't even know how to say it though.
Makuahuitl?
Makuitl maybe, or Makwait. No, Makwitl probably. Just a couple of these letters probably are completely silent. I bet.
Oh yeah, it's probably Mahuitl maybe, because it would be damn, need someone who speaks Spanish to tell us, because that's probably what the translation from Central American to Latin alphabet probably came from. Well, there we go. Learn something new every day.
Or what about this one? It's apparently a paper drop.
Oh, yeah. So I've been so busy. I haven't actually been able to look at that article, but that is an interesting prospect. Although if they said that Kronosaurus queenslandicus remains the only Kronosaurus, then that actually means that there's actually still a lot of Kronosaurus skeletons and fossil specimens, because we get so many of them, but they're just little tiny fragments, usually like a tooth or a snout with a few teeth in it. But it's interesting because, with Boyacensis, whatever it's called now, I don't want to repeat those names. My tongue doesn't know how to make those sounds. Yeah, no one does. But it's interesting because that would definitely be a part of the world that pretty much was connected to Australia at the time, or very close to it, for very similar animals to have migrated and evolved. And the reconstructions from all the assembled pieces of actual Kronosaurus queenslandicus, or at least Kronosauroidy things in Australia, comprise actually something very similar to the Boyacensis skeleton, which is interesting because I'm actually trying to remake Kronosaurus using those skeletons, because I've just had my crude Plastosaurus scaled to that thesis paper's work. It's a good paper, actually. It's very thorough. I'll try and remember it. But anyway, yeah, so I think in many ways, I've said this before with my attitudes to species, but I think if animals are really closely related, I don't get too particular about what exact species it would be in terms of semantics, because you get, animals that, people just lump into the same thing, like the African Asian elephant, even though they're not really the same animal. They're just both from the same broader family that we called elephants, because we both thought they were just the same animal. And then you get animals like the coyote and grey wolf and Ethiopian wolf, which, you could argue are just all wolves, because they can all interbreed and produce fertile hybrid species. Like, that's apparently what the African wolf is, because some of them in some parts are more closely related to grey wolves, and others in other parts more closely related to Ethiopian wolves. So and you're going to get animals that diverge and split and have different, because especially if it's a successful one, if it's going to be an animal that spreads all around the world, it's inevitably going to physically change, whether it's a different species because they can't interbreed or can't produce fertile offspring, who knows. But, even the grey wolf itself, you get ones that are slinky and jackal-shaped, and you get ones that are giant monster-sized things that are just blocky and heavily built. There's so many variations that I don't really worry too much about what species it is. Even if it is a different species, they're going to be similar-ish animals that you could probably, to some extent, treat like a just divergence of one big broad group. It's like Tylosaurus, Hainosaurus. You get, Diplodocus, Seismosaurus.
So what about the other one? See, this is the problem. Like let's just say since August, since I got a new job, I've been so heavily laying onto it because I'm trying to save up as much money as I can so I can sort out all of my like dentistry issues, whatever it is that's going on, because fucking who doesn't have that going on? And then I've got like, just things that I want to save up money for. And that means I have to work more so that I can get my probation hours knocked off quicker, so I can then start getting hopefully raises after that if things go well.
Nice.
And yeah, laying heavily with that means I don't have a lot of energy and time to spend reading, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
there's
it's
been a
sad. Same to me.
there's been a publication about some, what is it, dinosaur embryo or something, like a hatchling.
Yeah, there's a skeleton. I looked at that one actually. There's an intact egg with an intact skeleton inside of it, and yeah, that actually did look pretty cool. And that would actually, and that's an oviraptorid, I think, which is
Yeah, I
ironic
think
because
it's an overupper. Yeah,
which is still ironic because people are still depicting oviraptorids as egg eaters, even though this is it's the egg that Oviraptor was supposedly stealing. It's the same kind of pill-shaped egg. But yeah, it's an Oviraptor and it looks really cool. And it's interesting to see the kind of the pose of the skeleton, how it fits in the egg, because that was very clearly an animal that was getting close to getting ready to hatch. I mean, there's still a fair bit of space left in it, but
yeah,
that was really interesting seeing that. And you kind of see what morphology they would have had as hatchlings. They would have had, pretty sleek, efficient bodies. They wouldn't have been like as depicted these little helpless little chicklings. They probably could have actually started being reasonably independent as they hatched out of the eggs. It definitely didn't have the look of an awkward chickling looking thing. It actually looked like it could reasonably at least move around on its own and possibly grab bugs, maybe. Who knows?
yeah. Probably, like, you know how a lot of these groups of animals from reptilia in general, they have weird things going on when it comes to the dietary habits, bit and differences between being hatchlings versus being adults. Like even the tegus as well, they start off more carnivorous and they end up as they mature to be more herbivorous as well as the time goes on.
Yeah,
That probably has something to do with their physiology, maybe about what their nutrition demands in terms of their system, what it demands in order to maintain itself, and maybe for the growth boost, they just kind of like to eat more meaty protein kind of based food, and then later it just goes into just simply supporting their natural healthy body fat, which is where the fruit, like different various fruit diets, seem to come in quite well, because a lot of
yeah,
fruit that has sugar in it, it does encourage to boost up the fat reserves. Well,
yeah. That's
as
right.
many would probably be able to attest to that.
Oh, geez, I can attest to that too. I'm trying to lose weight, but yeah, that's I did a bio psych slash hunger and eating biology course at uni many years ago, and it's interesting because that's a constant thing because you need protein and calcium and bone and stuff from eating, or you can get a lot of protein from bugs actually, so you don't need the calcium so badly. But that's instantly extrapolated to the body because otherwise, if you have carbs or fats, your body then has to burn energy converting them into proteins that it then uses to build the body. But if you
Mhm.
eat protein directly, it just goes straight in and gets directly incorporated. And obviously, fats and sugars and can basically be stored as energy, and that's their default setting. And protein can as well, actually. But yeah, it's but obviously with if you don't actually need the protein, if you don't actually need to grow, you just want the fat stores and sugar and fat. Obviously immediately can act as those things.
Yeah, it's a very convenient sort of arrangement, and lizards are in particular have developed a very good way of storing up fat. In fact, because well, their tails seem to do a very good job for that. Especially in
Yeah.
case of geckos, geckos' tails can just go really fatty, like so fatty that they're almost as thick as like their own bodies at that point.
Wow. I didn't know that. I knew the tail stored fat, but I didn't realize it actually swelled up like you know, I suppose it makes sense though, because what else would they do? But yeah, so it's like
Yeah,
basically
the
a
geckos do that. Yeah, they're also
right.
you can. I mean, geckos, especially the well, I mean, technically speaking, the only ones that are somewhat assholes are actually tokays. I don't think any other gecko is an asshole, really, from the ones that are alive today, at least. It's funny that also the tokay gecko is actually the type species of gecko genus. It's actually called gecko, the species name of tokay gecko.
Wow. Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting how you have the type representative of the whole group being like the biggest asshole on the planet among animal kingdom, along with a gander slash goose, whatever. Well, I mean gander because it's usually the female goose. Usually they don't do anything. It's the freaking males that always go at you and they throw a hissy fit and then they chase you and maybe leave a couple bite marks on your ass if they get you as well. Because they're absolutely disgusting. I still remember dealing with them as a kid in a village a long time ago. Like, bloody hell, man, those things are evil. I was like always trying to play ninjutsu with them to try to sneak around them somehow or distract them so I could get past them. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Goose and Nick are really
See, the thing
nasty.
is,
I've had
because I was little, yeah. See, the thing is, I was little, and they were very big as well. Do you understand what I mean? Like it's like they felt almost like they were at least half the size of me. So I was like, hey, no, I ain't fucking with you, bro. I ain't fucking with you.
Yeah. Everything I've seen of geese are pretty mean. There was one in a cage and it was chewing on the bars with its serrated bill, trying to get to the people on the other side. It's like, wow, that's intense. Although I've seen swans get pretty nasty as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone thinks swans are nice little things, but they're really not. They're like turbo monster goose.
Let's just say they put up there's quite a bit of a counterbalance to the whole idea of swans being these romantic carers and dedicated love partners to each other, because it means that if you happen to get too close to their cygnus, the baby swans, they're called cygnus, or if you happen to be a different swan trying to steal the girl, you will get fucked up.
Oh yeah, I've seen swans.
No joke. I mean, really, they are pretty damn nasty. They don't pull punches, basically, if you will.
Yeah, I remember my time so I've seen black swans in Centennial Park in Sydney attacking giant eels just for getting too close to their crumbs. And so the eels have to wait till the swans are done, and then the swans leave. The eels shyly come in, and these are giant eels. They're like, they're not like tiny little ones. They're like, this round. They're monsters as well. But the swans bully them. And in the Cotswold in England, I saw during swan breeding season. Obviously, they just cruise around like patrol boats, and every time another swan in, they sort of zero in like sharks and chase them off. One made a nest right next to a bridge next to a cafe, and it just sat there. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know why he did it, because that everyone else is too afraid to actually climb down and touch the swan because they'd probably lose their hand for it. Oh, they're really terrifying. They grow huge. They're like the size of a person, some of them. They're just...
Yeah, they're massive, especially males as well. Male swans are even bigger than the females as well, so they're pretty big. I personally never actually been attacked. I've been hissed at once, but because I can read the signs very well, I immediately respond, just to be like, and I ain't fucking with you, and I just bugger off.
Yep.
Most people don't understand that, and then they complain that, oh my god, they're this, and like, yeah, dude, but you don't know, you're fucking with him, you know what I mean? That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like with dogs, with any animal, in where I am, I encounter red-bellied black snakes, which for anyone who doesn't know, they're obviously Australian snakes. They actually grow about the size, larger than a king cobra does, and they're related to sea snakes. They're one of the really super venomous snake families, although you don't die from getting bitten, but they're huge and pretty scary. Yeah, I deal with them all the time. I just walk up and I see it on a path and I just wait a few seconds and then it moves out of the way because it realizes I'm looking at it. But yeah, there's actually a trick with those snakes. They seem to know if you react in fright to it, because if you jump back, it knows you're afraid of it and it won't ever move. It'll just stay there and stay there. It's not going to budge. If you sort of lurk around in the distance and watch it, it thinks you're trying to eat it, so then it will flee. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you need to
they're very
create
clever
the impression
snakes.
that you are trying to eat it, but leave it room to escape so it doesn't strike up a defense position, but instead just tries to
Yep.
quickly run away.
Yep, they will take defensive positions. They can raise their heads, and unlike cobras, they aren't, restricted to the forward and down. They can strike in any which direction they feel like. So, and yeah, brown snakes, they're even worse. They're actually one of the few snakes that will actually chase people out of spite.
Nice. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
base snake.
yeah. I mean, normally everyone says, "Oh, snakes are more afraid of you than you are of them," which is true. Especially that tiny little snake that was in my fiance's house the other week. And although, no, actually, no, they were more afraid of it, even though it was a tiny little, about this long. But
Yeah.
golden crown snake. But anyway, brown snake, that's not true. It's not afraid of people at all. It just gets really cranky when people come go near it, and it chases. It does that. Apparently, that does that little
Mm.
sidewinder thing to help. Hey, Mr. Hazma, Merry Christmas to you too.
Merry Christmas to you. Hmm. Raise a glass.
I should have poured a juice, but too
Yeah.
late.
No, here in England, snakes is just not really a thing, even though there are species that live here and they're pretty abundant as well, but they just don't live so close to people where you would expect in other countries sometimes. Like, my God, my co-worker in the kitchen, one of the chefs as well, he's from Thailand, and
Hmm?
he's a biker as well. Like he drives a bike basically to work here as well. He's like one of those guys. He like gets a bike. Oh, I mean, in Thailand generally it's a popular thing as well, so they like getting around on bikes a lot. And he, I asked him, so you're afraid of snakes? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what is it? Why? Well, he's like, snake everywhere, And he talks like with that accent as well. He's like, a snake everywhere, on the road. Cannot drive without a snake everywhere, It's like he gets like so, annoyed. And I'm like, what about the geckos? Because the tokay gecko in Thailand, right? They make noises, loud noises like alarm clocks, basically at night, like middle of the night, and tourists cannot fall asleep because of that.
Wow,
Literally,
that's
they just like start screeching like, and then it goes like, like that,
yeah. I remember that actually. I remember that noise. It's yeah.
And but he says like he said, I don't know. For me, he's like, once it's dark, I fall asleep. I don't care, But snakes on the road for him is a big problem. He's like absolutely scared of them. He just petrified of them. Basically, he just cannot stand them. And then I said to him, "Oh, I like snakes. They're cool." He's like, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah, it's well, we are definitely a snakes everywhere place. The snake catcher that caught that little tiny golden crown at my fiance's parents' place. Yeah, he said there's probably like 50 other snakes in your garden, and she was like, "There's what?" Great, I love it. It's great. It's yeah,
I mean, even if he wasn't, even if he was lying, just to troll her, that was hilarious. Anyway.
that was pretty funny. I'm wondering if he was, but maybe he wasn't because in certain parts of Sydney, I mean, obviously in some parts it's basically just concrete urban sprawl as far as the eye can see. But in other places, you get lots of forested areas, and people have big, yards, and really lots of plants, and on along the fence line. So yeah, there's lots of places that a snake could actually live, and our snakes like water, so there's lots of waterways they like as well.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, even though I don't really find any snakes in my backyard, I do have water dragons. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which, if anyone doesn't know what they are, it's you think of the frill neck lizard, but without the frill, and it's like 4 times bigger. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
lizard, and they just will sit on the pool deck just to sunbathe, and then when they get too hot, they dive into the pool, swim around a bit, climb out, sunbake again. So it's like just having tourists in your pool. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they do. They don't hunt for anything in the pool water. They just swim in it, just cool off and just swim. Then they just jump out.
Do they climb trees as well?
They what?
Do they climb the trees as well sometimes, or are they not
Oh
climbers?
yeah, all the lizards.
I think they
Yeah,
are
all the
climbers,
lizards.
aren't they?
Yeah, they can all climb because there's so much forest here, and even the goannas. The goannas are really good climbers, by the way. That's something to keep an eye out for. Is in parts of Sydney and obviously the rest of Australia, we have giant monitor lizards called goannas. They're not as big as Komodo dragons, but they're pretty much bigger than any other lizard that exists. They're about the same size as the ones in Africa. And yeah, these yeah, but actually, they're probably the top of the food chain here. The dingoes don't really bother them when they reach a certain size, and they eat the snakes. They have no predators, and they actually seem to actually eat all the feral species that Australian, conservationists are worried about. It's their favorite food. They love eating rabbits. They love eating rats. They just go hunt them down wherever they find them and eat them. It's apparently they crush their skulls too, just to for something extra to think about.
Extra measures, yeah.
Yeah, they're the real deal. They have teeth shaped like great white shark teeth. They're like little blade teeth, and they have really strong bite forces. Their claws are like, you don't want to be scratched by those claws. They can slash you open. And we actually, when I lived in a farm, we had a steel chicken mesh. The goannas actually tore through it to get to the chickens. These chickens kill snakes, by the way.
These chickens kill snakes as well, yeah?
Yeah.
My God. It's like a whole, circular sort of, firing squad, in the wild.
Yeah. It's weird. Probably some of the dominant, most terrifying apex animals are actually two tiny little bird species that just all the other birds are afraid of. All the other animals are afraid of it. Even cats and dogs are afraid of these birds because they just get angry and dive bomb people. Actually, I think that's been a meme around the world as well. We have the Australian magpie, which is not actually related to any magpies at all. It's from a family of animals called I think crackernae or something like that. But yeah, so it's related to the Australian butcherbird, which is not actually related to the English butcherbird at all. It's just called that because it also does it. And it's them and the noisy minor birds, which aren't related to any minor bird, they're honey eaters. But yeah, they basically bully the entire animal kingdom around here. It's hilarious. The lace monitor, that's a really good question because I've been trying to look at the category. This is from Joint Cerulean 33. Lace monitors apparently cover all the monitors in Australia. They all fit into the very same tight group of monitor lizard family. They're, I think even the parentes might be a type of lace monitor. I'm not really 100% sure, but yeah, if you don't count the parenti and as a lace monitor, then yes, absolutely. The animals we call goannas, also known as lace monitors, and they can actually grow to humongous sizes as well. They're pretty variable. Like some are only about this long, some are like 1.5 meters. Some I'm sure get to 2. It's one time I was walking in the forest, Korean guy, and I actually saw goannas, climbing down trees. I thought there were people climbing the trees. I thought maybe there were kids or something. Their claws are almost as big as my hands. I have big hands. I should let you know. It's it just they do have big hands for their size, but they are really big. And the parentes are even bigger than that. And the parenti, I think, is pretty much the second largest lizard in the world, following the Komodo dragon itself. And apparently, they're pretty closely related. So yeah, and they're not really. Yes, yep. I love Godzilla. I love Shin Godzilla, especially. Shin Godzilla is awesome.
See, I am a little bit unsure. There are things about it that I find interesting, but there are also a lot of things about it that just don't resonate with me. Not necessarily that I dislike it; it just doesn't click. I'm trying to make a distinction here, because meaning that I could watch it and I wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, turn this shit off," But at the same time, I cannot feel like it's clicking. in
For
some
me,
cases.
yeah, it depends on the Godzilla. Like there are some Godzilla movies that I watched and I was just really, really bored watching them. And I actually think Critical Drinker's take on the Godzilla versus Kong movie, I actually agree because it's cool watching them smash down buildings, but when you watch these two things that suddenly they can't actually physically harm each other because they're too, and they just keep, it's like watching two action figures banging together for me. It's like, no matter how hard you hit the action figures together, the other one's not going to break. So it's just like watching that for 20 minutes.
That's a very good point, and I agree with him as well, especially in retrospect. Like initially, of course, I was having a bit of a fun watching it because it's still very beautifully shot scenes,
Hmm.
especially when Kong was evading his fire breath and all that stuff, and the fact that they actually made it that the fire breath can basically devastate Kong in like a very
Mm.
well aimed hit, which is quite good because it's not like they're trying to make it so that he can take it and he can just tank it. So I thought
Yeah.
that would have been. I thought that they were going to do something like this, and I thought, oh my god, that's going to be ridiculous if they do it. But I'm glad they didn't do it. So, but yeah, I agree with you and well, the drinker basically we seem to be both on the same page on this. That it didn't feel like either of them was really gonna do much to the other, and then the Mechagodzilla came in, and it kind of went into, okay, so it's a three-way kind of like two versus
Mm-hmm.
one at this point, which is kind of what I expected was gonna happen. The moment I found out that Mechagodzilla was gonna be in it, I knew immediately that, like, I already knew from get-go that they're not gonna make Kong or Godzilla to finish one off and that's it, because they would just kill off one of the icons of either franchises without allowing it to continue further. And those things
Yeah.
are flagman type of characters. You cannot allow them to be killed unless you are like Ryan Johnson from Lucasfilm, who like basically killed Luke Skywalker,
Yeah.
like, and you're basically like a dumb as a piece of brick. Then yeah, you would not do something like that to these kind of characters. So yeah. Let's see
Yeah,
what
I
else we
agree.
have. Yeah, yeah, keep going, keep going. I'm just gonna scroll through the
Oh
comments
yeah.
to see if there's anything else to bring up. But if you want to say something, just feel free.
Yeah, actually, I've noticed that as a thing. Like, first, the Ryan Johnson thing, I agree. And I think he was doing it to burn bridges and just to piss people off because he could do it. And then he was just going to leave it behind anyway. But I think what you said before about, it's like the lack of weight, of like, I think as well, like, there's partly the fact that they're going to keep them because Hollywood predictably want to make sequels, and there's nothing more to it than that. And if they destroy Mechagodzilla, they'll just make another one and bring him back. It's yeah, but
Yeah, you can always
I
make
think
another Mechagodzilla easily.
yeah, and but I think as well, that's actually something I've noticed in a lot of movies is the lack of like the monsters don't do much damage to each other to make it more dramatic, and it's like you see this in the dinosaur movies. You see like in the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World films, where every time a Tyrannosaurus bites into something, it's like the same intensity of a dog biting into something. It's, like, oh, it will draw blood and it will hurt, but it's not that bad. Like, this is an animal with a biting force like, what, 1/3 of Robosaurus, that giant hydraulic dinosaur that eats trucks. Like, it's an actually in the same league as an actual car crushing machine. And any of the animals it would bite, it would be sinking into its bones at the very least. And we know that because we actually have fossil evidence of that happening like multiple
Hmm.
times. Or just it's the teeth, biting so hard it scrapes along the bone. And that in the movies, you'd never know that. I told people that and they were like, what? And
It's
yeah,
almost like
it's,
basically, imagine if you have, uh, a steel, kind of spike, and you just dive it into a sheet of brass or something, or a sheet of
yeah,
bronze or whatever, and just scratch it really hard with like as much force as you could possibly exert. You're gonna leave a pretty nasty gash on that as well, and that's kind of what it's like when T-Rex bites something, basically, because its teeth and jaws are just so strong that it just can. There's no other
yeah,
way to explain it other than that it simply can't do it. And
yeah,
yeah, and I agree that I think ever since they did this thing when they killed off the Jurassic Park 3 T-Rex, that T-Rex specifically, to a Spinosaurus. They are too afraid of doing anything of that sort. And then on the other hand as well,
Yeah, it's
I'll be honest with you, it's been a mess. The franchise is just absolute dumpster fire right now. I still have yet to make myself waste whatever precious hours of my time that I have spare from work to watch the Camp Cretaceous season 4, I think it is now, just so I could do it a review and my channel traditions, if you will, and just to keep ranting on how horrible it is. Just literally hate watching the crap out of it.
yeah.
So, yeah,
I haven't even bothered watching one episode of Camp Cretaceous. I'm just lost
checked out.
interest in. You
Yeah,
checked out. I checked out probably after the first Jurassic World movie, and even then, I admit I kind of might have skim watched it. Then it's just I think after watching the Nostalgia Creek, after watching Drinkers, takes on, I think it's a pity they just have so many things where it would actually be more dramatic, more interesting if they actually had the dinosaurs acting more like their real life counterparts. Like you notice, I've actually almost been tempted to do like a Virgin versus Chad thing, where it's like the scientifically informed dinosaur versus the Hollywood one, which
yeah,
somehow is weaker. Like you have Triceratops on screen is always like depicted as some kind of strangely fragile, kind of weak, gentle animal, when it's like it's got a near indestructible frill. It displaced all the other animals in North America by a ridiculous amount. It's
Do you know
it's
what
clearly
else
not a
I absolutely despise? One of the things, and this is a peeve of mine as well, that I noticed that everybody who attempts to make this so-called, accurate, scientifically accurate dinosaurs versus Jurassic Park dinosaurs, they actually miserably fail at representing the scientifically accurate ones just as
yeah.
badly, if not worse. So it kind of just like, for those who know something at least, and I don't like to boast, I can, however, say freely that I do know things, and most of these things are not my own discovery or knowledge. These are things that I know from other people who are a lot more qualified and
Mm-hmm.
who have had actual experience, and who, like Jeffrey, our good mutual acquaintance and friend from
Yep.
our server, the fellow daimyo as well, he is very knowledgeable about these things, and same I could say about many others. So this is why it kind of creeps me out a little bit when people are posting this. Oh yeah, this is very accurate, but then I look at it and I'm just being like, but dude, it's not. It really
That's
isn't. I'm
true.
not trying to be like a dickhead or anything. I'm just looking at what is going on, and I'm just saying what I'm thinking immediately. That's it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good point. And it's actually something as well I've noticed is a lot of times when they try and depict their version of the dinosaur, which has a lot of creative, license, they always have to depict it against some kind of 1930s claymation monster, you know, or or an 1800s reconstruction to try to make it look more reasonable.
yeah,
Like, no, just you have the bones, just check some bird anatomy and for the muscles and look at the fossils and the skin and have a go. It's like you already have people like Scott Hartman already making skeletals and Franois and everyone else.
all right.
Just see you,
Let's
Tasmanian
say
Tiger.
goodbye. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for
Or
coming
if
as
you're
well.
actually in Tasmania, Boxing Day. Have a happy Boxing Day.
Yep, happy Boxing Day as well. All right. So sorry, carry on, Harry. Didn't mean to do that.
Um. Oh my god, I just lost my train of thought for a second.
Is
I'll get it back in.
when you were saying that they were doing this whole comparison to really old pieces,
Mm,
and then birds came into the equation and things like that. Basically, that's where you were.
yeah, and that's right. And it's kind of like taking credit for the fact that you were born in a time when scientists actually started to know better, and lots of people who knew anatomy started making skeletals, and you could piggyback off that. And I think that's kind of taking credit for the boast that you're better than a 1930s reconstruction, because it's like, nah, dude, if you were in the 1930s, you would have made that reconstruction, probably proudly boasting how much smarter you are than the 1800s. Don't go there. Like I'll never do that myself, because that's just lame. Because and I've actually said it, in lots of old reconstructions of what's that thing called, Ointotherium, is it? Those
Wintertherium, yeah.
yeah,
The weird looking one with a bunch of bumpy little like thingamajig on the head, like lots of
yeah,
ornamentation. Yeah.
and and that he depicted it with antlers, he depicted it with a trunk, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? It's actually a pretty good take for what he had at the time. That's actually a pretty good, attempt at doing it, and there's all kinds of possibilities to why he had antlers, or like maybe there was a bunch of specimens that got confused around at the time, and he thought, okay, I'll take your word for it, and then it turned out to be wrong. It's happens all the time, It's
Yeah, have you got a ticket?
sorry, that was my fiance. She just
Texting?
just keeps sending me pictures of
Okay, that's fine.
Christmas
Yeah,
presents.
if you need to take a call, feel free. I don't mind.
No, it's all good. She's just sending me funny texts. It's all good.
Okay.
So yeah, it's all a case of a lot of old things as well. Like actually, to be fair, the Jurassic Park books at the time called the Deinonychus of Velociraptor, because it was pretty much at that point of discovery where they assumed they were the same animal until they found more skeleton bones and realized, oh wait, they're actually close sort of relatives of different dromaeosaurs. And even I've actually done it. I had the song, my original chart, which I eyeballed. I had the Songhua river mammoth as one of the animals in it, and then it's like turned out that animal was actually a composite of a bunch of other elephants, and it isn't real. And it's like it happens.
Yeah, it
Everyone
happens, exactly. Yeah.
Discovery jumps on eagerly tries to be the first to depict it, then it's like, oh wait, that animal doesn't actually exist. It's a composite.
Yeah,
I don't really bother when people from yesteryear get something wrong, because it's like we only learned now. It's like Spinosaurus reconstructions. They're still under debate now, but we have so many more bones than we did of a Spinosaurine than we've had for like the past 200 years with, the stroma skeletons, just in bits and pieces. Now we actually have, debatably, of course, because people have different still aren't sure about the Ibrahim ones, but one way or another, it's still a Spinosaurine and still a reasonably intact series of bones. So we didn't have that.
Yeah.
And now suddenly we're having sail-tailed Spinosauruses and square-sailed Spinosauruses, and it's just what we develop.
Yeah, it's just part of the process at this point of just analyzing what is found and comparing it and testing it, I guess. It might even turn out to be a completely different thing later on, who knows? But I guess the more you know, the less likely it's going to change too much, due to the fact that you are obviously revealing more and more pieces of the puzzle as you fill it in. So.
Yeah, it's kind of an exciting time, actually, because we're getting all these mystery dinosaurs now actually getting some real properly reconstructions, or just people are starting to go through those archives and find, oh wait, this is actually the missing pieces for an animal that we've just speculated about this whole time. Like Simbacabua, for example, with its, that was only in the last 10 years they just fished out its jaw from a drawer and think, oh wait, what is this? It's unreal.
So Harry, I want to quickly switch to something else for briefly while you're still here, because I think it would be more fun if we did it together. In fact, I was going to do it by myself first, but I didn't know you were going to show up. So now that you are here, it's actually very convenient. So how about this? I know you are, well, you used to be, like me, you used to be a fan of Game of Thrones, right?
Yes.
Well, I am really in the mood of, I'm really in a bit of a bitchy mood right now. And one of the actors apparently talking trash about fans. Do you have any guesses who that might be? Unless you've watched a video by a certain channel who would have already pointed it out. But if you haven't, do you think you might know who that might be?
Okay, so a former Game of Thrones actor talking trash is already notorious
It's a recent one, very recent one right now. This is a recent one.
So, geez, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to take a guess, given that they sort of appear a lot in media that it's either Amelia Clark, because she seems to keep appearing in stuff, or the guy who plays Jon Snow. Would it be?
Kit
Am I right?
Harington, you think?
What?
So you think it's Kit Harington most likely, or Emilia Clarke?
I think I haven't kept in the loop. I'm just taking a guess because they seem to
Mhm.
appear a lot in different media. And I
Okay.
thought, no, okay, maybe it's one of them.
All right. Well, how about let me reveal who it is, and I'll share the screen right now, and you will know with an article which we're gonna quickly skim through. Uh, Hopefully, not take anything out of context, of course, as we try to. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that it's in context. But if anything, people can always read the article anyway to get a better understanding. And yeah, let's take a look.
Oh,
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage.
Yep. This guy.
Wow, I was not expecting Peter Dinklage to run the pretty white people right off into the sunset together.
Yeah, hang on. Let's just zoom this in as much as we can. Yeah, you can see this now. And yeah, it's quite interesting. So the headline itself is already quite captivating. Wanted because people wanted the pretty white people to ride off into the sunset.
Well, I will say that I can actually see he might have a point because I think a lot of people, you know, they're used to this. Like when you think about it, in the media, in movies for the past 100 years, especially Disney, we have movies where they're just, you have the nice, photogenic protagonists, and
Mm-hmm.
the fact they're white is just because it's in the Western society, almost everyone's white, so it's just, and for most audiences are white, most actors would be white.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, that would still apply. But yeah, you get like all the favorite photogenic people. Everyone wants them to have a happy ending, and for all the relationships,
Mm-hmm.
all everyone relationships with the other people, and want to have everything all wrapped up nice and neatly. And
But this
the
is what
game,
you're getting based on the headline. So we haven't
the
actually
headline,
broken
yeah, I'm
down the
not reading
article
anything
yet.
else.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the impression I
So
get. That's because I've noticed that a fair bit.
yeah.
Anyway, let's continue.
So let's see what actually happened in the article. So let's keep
Mm-hmm.
reading. So he says here, can you read this text by any chance, or is it too
Yep,
small for
easy.
you?
Yep, I can read it. I have
Yeah.
a droning reading voice, so you probably don't want me to actually read it.
So he goes like, wanted the pretty white people. So this is the headline basically here. So we're
Yeah.
talking like he's basically trying to describe the meta Disney kind of fairy tale ending. I can
Yes.
already debunk that the hardcore fans of Game of Thrones did not want that. He's completely wrong in his analysis here, but let's carry on.
I wouldn't, as a fan of the books, I would never have assumed there'd be a fairy tale ending. Like,
Dude, even the fans of the show did not assume that anyway, because they already understood what the show was about when the first season finished. And if that was
yeah,
not enough, then after the third season finished, they already knew for real that that's it. Like, this is like winter is coming. You know what I mean? That's what they were getting out of it. So,
yeah. I
you know what I
think,
mean? So it's he's
yeah,
there. My point is that he would have been right in any other situation if the show itself did not set itself up as the type of show from the get go that does not follow this template. So it kind of means that he's, for to me, and I'm just speaking as somebody who likes to analyze, people and behavior. Even though I'm not a
mhm.
therapist or psychologist, but I do actually spend maybe sometimes a little bit of extra time doing it, unnecessarily so, maybe just for fun. Uh, and because it's actually helpful to me as well to a certain degree. And I would say that he seems to be out of touch with the audience that he's referring to, because what
I,
people he speaks of are not his core audience of the show. They're not that type of audience.
mm, I think that's right. I think what it actually was he completely nailed what the attitude was, but not of the audience, but of the creators and what they thought the audience was. And whether he meant that or not, but didn't want to get in trouble with his employers and wanted to get jobs later by pointing out that. But I think that's what it was. I think once they,
But then he
ran
goes
out of
to
books that
this.
are
He
based
says
on,
because people want it. He says people want it. He didn't say creators, right? He was specific in that one.
yeah.
So
I
they
mean,
kind
I
of
wouldn't. necessarily say he was, on the ball, but I think that's pretty much that same attitude probably would have been on the writers of the show once they ran out of books to actually base stuff on. They thought, okay, well, let's
Oh, and
do a
that's the thing he should have just said. He just said, "Hey, listen, it is what it
Mm,
is. Writers, we had to wrap it up quicker, so it kind of happened like that. I'm sorry that they feel that way if they are disappointed, but it's what it is. I had a great time working with people. I met wonderful people, made new friends, whatever. It was great. We produced a lot of cool merchandise, whatever. Just like talk about these kind of things and actually use this as a way to promote it. But why do you have to talk like this, to people? And but we haven't. We're just in the beginning, by the way. So we
mm,
haven't even gone past the bit because see here,
yeah,
and he said, and this is another thing that I find that he's a bit clueless here. That when he says, okay, George R. R. Martin, the guy who basically created this whole thing, he said that he wanted it to go for at least two more, just for two more seasons, and he goes, it was the right time, no less, no more. You don't want to wear out your welcome, although I'm not sure that show could have. Well, okay, he's right in the last part. Like if the whole thing was done right, really, it would not have worn out its welcome. It would have actually attracted more audience, in my opinion. And
definitely.
he is kind of neither here nor there on this. Although I don't understand why he could not have just said, "Yeah, it would have been nice if it, carried on for a bit longer. Maybe we could have had a bit more, story to tell. Something like this, like without having to really say something bad about anybody else in terms of the
Mm,
writers
mm,
or creators, because he this is the problem with Hollywood celebrities like him. They try to be extremely politically correct, and a lot of times they trash the audience because they think that this is going to gain them favor with critics and with their
mm,
potential employers, because
yep,
they want to make friends with the right people so they can continue being employed. They don't
yep, that's
understand
right.
that the people who pay their money, their fares, they're not the producers or the people who hire them in the studios. It's not the studios who pay the money. It's the people who watch your show pay the money. And if you lose those people, well, guess what? You lose the money. So he doesn't understand how
Yeah.
this works.
Oh, I
And
think
let's,
I could guess.
yeah, yeah,
It's
go ahead, go
usually,
ahead.
yeah, I think actors usually get paid by the people that employ them, regardless of how well the show actually does. So I think it's like, um, for them, they're one step removed from the audience, liking the show or not liking the show going under. It's like they still get paid no matter what. So I think it's the more immediate source of,
It will depend
income
on the
is.
contract
Mm,
because what you're describing is just one of several types of employment contracts and deals that they can make. Because some of them, they make the deal is that they get paid a fixed amount no matter what, right? There's one side of it. That's this one. So it means that they have to do whatever they can to get that money and give it to the actor who signed up. That's the deal like this. But there's another way of the deal, which is usually if the show is successful, it's more profitable for the actor because it means that they
mhm.
will get a certain percentage continuously so long as the revenue keeps coming in. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess there's also the flip side of actor stereotyping because you had like a lot of actors I think try to distance themselves from shows they've been on too long because it sort of defines their career when the show inevitably goes under or collapses or wraps up. You get like Mark Hamill, for example, he hasn't really starred in much on-screen stuff. He does a lot of voice acting work,
Yeah, that's
and
it.
only
Yeah.
recently, and pretty much everything he starred in that wasn't voice acting work was as Luke Skywalker. He
Yeah.
So I think there's that kind of maybe he might have been worrying about that as well. Like if you thought, you know,
Oh, yeah,
I got to shake
possibly.
off being Tyrion, or otherwise I'll only get roles as
He's gonna be
dwarves and fantasy.
typecast. Yeah, no, that's one of those things. That's true. A lot of actors do get typecast, and that's the typical issue that they face a lot. But in this paragraph here, this is where I am kind of already angry at this point because this is where he just downright goes off the rails, and this is for this I can already say I would happily slap his face for this. So let me read this out. Then he continues. But I think the reason was the reasons there was some backlash about the ending is because they were angry at us for breaking up with them. Oh my god, it's like we're married to you and your precious product, Peter, like you and your face on a screen. Like seriously, we are. This is like the classic narcissistic Hollywood celebrity mentality. They love us so much. I don't know. I can't deal with the. No, oh my god! And now they're crying. They're crying because they know they're not gonna see us anymore, baby. What do we do? Like shut your face. My god, man, this is so stupid. But this is only this sentence. Okay, there's next one. Okay, he continues. Okay, that's the thing. It doesn't stop there. This guy doesn't stop. It's like we were going off the air and they didn't know what to do with their Sunday nights anymore. They wanted more, so they backlashed about that. Dude, if I have nothing else to do, at least I know I can have a fucking wank. Okay? Like you don't have to fucking give me anything to do on any night. If I don't have something to do, I'll find something to do. Like, just trust
Yeah,
me. Like, this is the
yeah,
problem
that's
with these people. They think that literally everything revolves around them, and if people are not glued to the screens watching them, it's like they have
mm,
nothing else to do. You know what, Peter? I know he's not watching this. Okay, let's just be real. But I'm gonna troll him for this anyway, in case somebody just who knows. The loose cannons happen from time to time, right? Let's say if this gets clipped somehow and gets shared, I'll just say, Peter, why don't you go and get a job in our restaurant takeaway, and we'll teach you how real life works. Yeah, quickly, very quickly, baby. You will know
yeah,
what's up,
and I think
and you will know that there's always something to do. Okay, no matter what. So yeah,
yeah,
what
and
are your
there is.
thoughts, Gary? Before we continue, what do you think?
Well, I think that is a bit of a vestigial thing left over from the '90s, attitudes, because you get, back before the internet, there was at least a zeitgeist of, everything revolved around the media, everything revolved around the entertainment industry, because they were pretty much the only things you could do besides read books or have, you know, or just have hobbies outside of anything that involved electricity.
Because remember as well
But
at the time what that you were talking about 90s and stuff, the geek
mm,
hobbies, if you will, they were considered to be uncool for society. So they was
yeah,
more like an underground thing. So it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So people did not engage in this openly. They were because it's like, oh my god, if a girl I like finds out, she's never gonna date me. That's how bad it was, basically.
yep, and I can say that's not true at all.
I can
But
say it's
yeah,
not true either, but especially now. But back then, it depends where. In Russian culture, for example, it was somewhere along the lines of true. But then again, it depends how you yourself position it. If you're confident and own your shit, if you're not like one of those who's like ashamed of it, guess what? If you're confident about what you like and how you are and how you communicate with people, it doesn't really matter. Girls are still gonna like you. So
yeah, but and you're right. That was a part of it as well. Basically all the competition to mainstream media was maligned as nerdy and lame and
yeah,
dorky, and if you do that, you're not cool. But now that doesn't exist anymore, and I think a lot of people in the entertainment industry have really, really underestimated how popular the competition is now, and I think in many ways some have tried to cash in on it and turned it into Streethaven and ruined it, and then they're back to square one again. I think that's going to happen again. I think a lot of um, you know the whole nerd hobby is going to basically, but now this time the line itself from the mainstream, just not be caught under that. But yeah, I think that is a thing. Is a lot of people still are addicted to shows and movies, and the same people from before, like in the '90s, where everything had you had to be cool, everyone was following
mhm.
fads. They still exist, of course, but I think a lot of people in Hollywood massively overestimate how big that group is anymore and how much they comprised their audience, because they don't realize that the majority of people that watch Game of Thrones are nerds. They're not going to be the kind of people that like the Disney Channel very much. I mean, obviously there's
Mhm.
Mandalorian Channel, but take the
Yeah,
Mandalorian out of the Disney Channel,
yeah, pretty
you're going to
much
get
take
two
this out.
completely non-overlapping audiences
Um,
completely. It's like Mandalorian is the nerd lifeboat of the Disney Channel. Without it, it would just basically, yeah. And I think they don't realize they are two very different groups that do not particularly like their stuff, blending in, because it's usually something that the other group doesn't like. But I think that's pretty much what the attitude's coming from, is he assumes that the audience aren't a bunch of nerds who like something different and something, like what Game of Thrones was. And we're more just, your run-of-the-mill, sort of, basically the, mainstream, whatever that is anymore, type of audience that, wants their cliched happy ending stuff. And you think he could just be projecting that on the wrong audience, I think.
The other thing that really drives me a little bit nuts is this part here as well that I just scrolled down to. He says, if you know your history, when you track the progress of tyrants, they don't start off as tyrants. I'm talking about, spoiler alert, what happened. And then he goes on and saying that it's gradual and how it's all happening. So basically, that's his point. But the problem is that he's ignorant completely of the fact that it wasn't gradual. That was the main pet peeve as well about the development. It wasn't about the fact that she became a tyrannical maniac and genocidal kind of creep. The whole point was that it didn't happen organically, and it happened so suddenly out of nowhere. And everything that led up to it as well was so fake and forced that people just weren't buying it. And that's why George R. R. Martin was correct that, well, yeah, extra 2 seasons would have been helpful, because for one, you could have written a much better arc for the White Walkers than just have them as this doom and gloom zombie apocalypse type of cliche. And you could have actually had some substance to do with like the actual lore of Ice and Fire, the whole old gods, the Raylor, maybe they're one and the same thing, all of these things. You could have explored that. You could have explored what happens to the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Could he have been the Night King by any chance? How did he become one? Why, etc. If it was the case, you could have explored all of these things. You could have answered all of these questions, and actually made your story so much more complicated. Even when you are talking about somebody who is considered to be the super sinister ultimate evil of that world, which were the White Walkers. And even then, you could have given a very nice angle to their side of the story and the lore, which they completely failed. They just completely failed to capitalize on it. And well, there's that basically. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, just gonna answer.
Answer it. That's fine.
So that was all good. But yeah, you're right. And I think with the White Walkers, you could have had more of a background. Like, I've noticed something in the books is they were building up, a constant background where you could see factions aligned to both that fire god Raw, and also factions potentially aligned to the Night Walkers or Jormungand, which I'm pretty sure is the Night King. You see them both starting to build up a big consolidation of power behind the scenes in the books. So maybe they could have had that there was some kind of ancient war between those two factions, which, brings Daenerys in, and that could have really played off as well. They could have done that. But yeah,
exactly. It could have been like their way to to implement the whole idea that there's been like an ancient sort of war going on with the magic reawakening now for like a climactic ultimate showdown where it all gets like settled there, here and now, basically. This could have been like absolutely the most badass shit they could have ever come up with in the history of fantasy TV show, or just generally fantasy writing, if you will. But what a waste of opportunity here. So sorry, Peter, I have to completely disagree with you on that, mate. That's completely out of nowhere. Completely try to throw a turd, but it didn't stick here, mate. That's what I can say. Now,
and it's a mistake Hollywood keep making. They keep, and you actually notice this as well with marketing. Like that Cowboy Bebop movie, they tried their best to get outrage views, and no one watched it because nerds don't fall for that stuff. They don't do outrage clicks. They don't do hate views. They, you get a handful of people do hateful views, but just so they can make a movie warning everyone else not to watch it, and everyone goes, okay, cool, thanks for warning me, I won't do it. that kind of stuff happens for, like the Kardashian kind of audience. They love hate viewing stuff, but they're not nerds and they never will overlap. So making notoriety doesn't work, and projecting that same gullible audience that love to watch, trashy reality TV onto nerd audiences is the reason all the nerd franchises are doing so badly, is because the audience keeps getting misdiagnosed, for lack of a better word, as something that's
They
the
don't like
exact
this
opposite.
stuff. It's very simple. It's really as you said it. It's really simple. It's a spot on analysis from you here. Nerdy audiences are a lot more nuanced than just simply all these kind of trivial things, and that is also not to mention that a lot of these nerdy franchises have been infected by wokeness, which is just generally not
Mm.
popular among anybody who consumes any kind of product. It's just not popular. Look at the numbers. People aren't paying. I mean, I can argue all I want about Jurassic World franchise, not being a good quality, but okay, it still makes money because it's still popular. People still pay
Mm.
for it. I cannot deny the fact that it's popular. I can only say that I don't find it particularly attractive anymore or good because of
Mm-hmm.
certain reasons that I believe to be objective, at least because, well, there are some objective points you can point out that don't make a good writing, or could have made it much better at least. I wouldn't say that make it don't make it good. I will say that they could have made it better. Okay, let's put
Yep.
on an
Absolutely.
emphasis more on the potential of improvement rather than whether or not it's good or not as it is. So my main focus is on the potential of how much better it could have been. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that you can objectively point that out. But even then, I cannot really say that it's not popular because it is popular. People still buy it. I don't like it. Don't get me wrong, but people still buy it. But this kind of stuff, like when it comes to wokeness and things like that, look at fucking Marvel. Recently, they've got Spider-Man. It wasn't woke, and I haven't seen the movie yet. But I've seen
It's
a
good.
lot of people. Everybody says it's good.
It's
Everybody,
fantastic.
yeah, well, that's what I keep hearing, and also it's doing amazing, despite the fact that they
Mm.
always keep running with the idea that pandemic is the only reason that's killing the numbers when it came to like the previous projects they released. But that kind of thing got out the window now because basically it gets debunked by that whole thing. Because if people want to go see something, they'll go and see it, and that's what happened here. They wanted to see that Spider-Man. They went to see it. It got really good traction, and people loved it. But when it came to like the previous ones, like the Eternals or whatever it is that they were doing, like just all of the previous prior projects that just went completely to shit, they were infected with woke identity politics, and people don't want that. And
Mm.
unfortunately, Game of Thrones was kind of, I wouldn't say it was completely woke, but it was really dangerously towing that line too much, especially when it tried to turn all its coincidentally make all the female characters amazing and have the best endings, aside from Daenerys, obviously. I repeat Daenerys. But other than that, I mean, Arya got turned into a Mary Sue, but I would say probably maybe not because of the wokeness, but more because they just didn't know what to do with her. They just really didn't
Mm.
have a clue what to do with the character and what was the whole point of her arc. And Sansa getting crowned as Queen in the North was just completely like, to me, just nonsense. Like, it
Yeah.
just doesn't work to me at all. It's just not Sansa. She just does. She's sorry, but she's as dumb as a sheep. Like, how would she ever be able to rule anything in that at that stage? At least there was just not enough time to actually get her to the point where she could be qualified to do something like that. And then you have
Yeah.
um,
In the book, she's not, it's not really clear if she's smart. She's definitely gullible and fell for, and got a dad killed. But then in the books, the signs of her cunning are usually she's like a really bad person. Like, I'm not going to spoil it because
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what
I
happens
know
in the
I've
books
read the
is very
books as
different
well,
from the
but yeah,
show. But yeah, it definitely isn't. If she becomes Queen of the North, it definitely won't be because she's the most wonderfulest, noblest ruler. It would be because of very good political engineering and backstabbing, which is what the books made the books good. Was that it had these factions of different nasty people, and it was
yeah,
intriguing to watch them one up each other. And now, and obviously that was Martin's work, and and without him, having a book to base it on, it's just okay. Now everyone's being heroic because that's what
Yeah.
people like.
Well,
Oh,
anyway,
that's all.
he's
Hmm?
pretty much at this point we can conclude this, and the only reason why I wanted to center on this part is that he goes on and saying how the show subverts what you think, and I disagree with the idea that subversion is a good thing because as I like to quote, I don't know if you know this guy or not, but if you aren't familiar, I strongly recommend you to catch up on videos with Midnight's Edge, the channel,
Hmm.
and they frequently invite their regular guests. He's practically almost part of their team at this point, to be honest. His name is Kamran Pasha. He's an American Pakistani producer from Hollywood, and he is like really good at explaining and analyzing all the insights in terms of how the stories are produced and written and what makes a good one and what becomes popular, and basically uses a lot of his experience to give you very reasonable takes, so, and he very rightfully said that it's good to be able to surprise your audience, but subverting your audience is usually a very bad thing. It doesn't lead you to
Yep.
a thing because what happens is that you are doing it at the expense of the quality of the story and your product just for the sake of doing something that people did not expect to happen. And
Mm.
earlier events of Game of Thrones, in case of Ned Stark's events, in case of Robb Stark, even though you would say that, oh yeah, they were like that was so good, but it's easy, it's good because it's well written. Because when you start looking
Mm.
at it in retrospect, it makes sense why it happened. Everything
Yep.
makes sense. You can lay it all out plainly and simply. Even my dad, when he was watching Game of Thrones, you know what he said when he saw basically the whole scene with Robb Stark and his whole army at that point, because they were off guard, basically getting slaughtered brutally by Freys and their allies and Boltons
Mm.
basically and everything. It's like my dad was like, I was like, well, that's crazy, isn't it? And he's like, well, I would have done the same thing if I was in the place of the old man.
Mm.
Like he actually said it. My dad said I would have slaughtered the fuck out of them too if I were them. It's like I would have done the same thing, because
Yeah.
in this position, he, this would be basically him, you know, saving his face and regaining his honor, because this is what would have meant everything in that world, in feudal world like that. You know, that is why
Yeah.
you would be, yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. Even though he done it only because he had a backing from Tywin Lannister, we know that for a fact. That he would not have
Mm.
been able to do something like this if Tywin Lannister did not promise him protection. But you know, uh, that's kind of the underlining point. But still, the fact that he was inclined to it rather than having to still be like, no, you know what, that's fine, we'll forgive you. We're happy with taking your uncle because Tullys, they're good as well for us because they are like
Mm.
the lords of the Riverlands, which is we're part of, so why not? But instead of doing that, he still kind of went like, nah, fuck you. Like, and in the books as well, it kind of happened. There was a lot more to it because um, like there were Freys who died for Rob, in the war when they were fighting the Lannisters, you know, and
Mm.
this kind of added more insult to injury in that sense, that like I
Yep.
lost some good people, I mean, okay, Walder Frey did not care about losing relatives, but there were some of his relatives who cared about losing those relatives more than even
Yep.
Walder himself did, which is kind of all builds up together about why it was a very big insult for him to do it. And all it was because, I fell in love, but all it was is just basically he just didn't have enough times to have sex with her so that he could get it out of his system and then be like, okay,
Hmm.
now I'm going to marry the Frey girl. I've had enough of that. So, and the worst part is that he could have still married the Frey girl. He could have still ended up, if he wanted to fuck the other girl and have a relationship with her, so long as he kept to his duty, still married her and still fathered children, that would have been okay.
Yep. It's yeah, and that's actually a thing I've noticed in movies as well, or games or shows or any story. Anything happens that makes sense for it to happen, and it's good. And I'm probably going to be Merry Christmas, Ryan.
Merry Christmas, Ryan.
But okay, this is probably going to be, I'll probably be very alone in this. I actually did enjoy the first series of Star Trek Discovery.
I never watched it. I'm just not a Trekkie, so
yeah.
I'm sure that people who are watching who are Trekkies, they will probably have something to say about it, though.
They'll probably be like, that's the most horrifying thing I've ever heard. Because, yeah, Trekkies do not like Star Trek Discovery. And I admit I'm not really much of one. I watched the series a bit, but never got into it. And one thing I will compare with Star Trek Discovery to Star Trek Voyager is there's one in each of the series, there was a situation where they were in a really sticky situation. They didn't know how to get out of it. Spoilers for both of them. I'm sure you've seen it all by now. In Voyager, there was a point where they get to a planet full of hedonistic people who are just kind of lazy assholes, not really hedonistic, who have technology that could transport the ship that's lost in a different galaxy substantially closer to where they are, because they have on their planet they have a special thing that allows them to teleport halfway across space, and this planet where they're at is halfway to the destination they want to get to. And they're like, can we have that technology? Oh no, we don't sell our technology. And I'm thinking, okay, so these guys don't sell their technology, but they have it. They like stories. You could just say, look, okay, could you just build a second teleporter on that other planet that's halfway to our galaxy, teleport our ship to that planet, and then from that planet teleport it to the rest of the way? Then you get access to our galaxy. They could, it's one thing if they couldn't have done it, and that would be fine. It's like they at least thought of an obvious solution that they never once proposed. It's like, oh, we're just going to have to steal it now. It's like, well, didn't you at least ask this really obvious question that I thought of immediately when this scene happened? But no, they didn't ask it. And, even if they had, it only works on the planet, the teleport thing, so you couldn't have actually done it anyway. Fine. But you should have asked. That would have made the show clever. Instead, it was just everyone being stupid and entertaining only stupid ideas. And the stupid ideas didn't work anyway. But it's like, and then in Discovery, there's a part where, so they have a ship that can teleport instantaneously anywhere, and they're surrounded by a fleet of enemy ships. And I thought, okay, this is what you do: get your ship to teleport around all those other ships and shoot them quickly, and then strafe around by teleporting, and you'll win. And what they do, they teleport the ship around and shoot them and strafe them exactly as I said. I'm like, fucking thank you. That's all, that's the point. It's like when you have this thing and they think, okay, why don't we do this obvious logical thing with the stuff we got, and it works and it's great, and that's a cool thing. You can make a good plot if you have an obvious thing that they could do, but that would ruin the whole story if they could just do it. Give them a reason why they can't do it. If you have, don't try and play dumb and hope the audience is dumb enough to not notice. Just give, if the thing has to happen a certain way for the plot, give a good reason. And then the plot can happen and everyone be like, yep, great.
Yeah.
That's what should happen.
Well,
but yeah.
Anyway, I think this article, we can pretty much conclude it now. There's nothing much else, to be honest. It's pretty much just water, nothing special. So, well, what can I say, Peter Dinklage? If you're watching this, which I doubt you are, you would probably not be wasting your precious time on the plebs and simpletons, corn-fed ones like us. But if you happen to come across this, Merry Christmas, asshole, eat shit. Anyway, that's it. That's all I gotta say to the likes of him anyway. So, but yeah, this is the classic example to illustrate why just these people, man, they're completely out of touch. They do not understand, their audience and who they work for. Really, who they really work for.
Yeah,
there are some who do. Henry Cavill, by the way, Henry Cavill. Oh, he understands. He
Yeah,
understands the geek fandom. He
he
understands
gets
it,
it.
and he gets it. But I,
He
I
builds a
haven't been
thick.
able to bring myself to watch the second season of The Witcher because I keep hearing that it's such a so trash. Even the first one, I didn't like it. I only watched it because of Henry, so that was the only reason for me. That I only wanted to
Pretty much.
watch it because I wanted to see Henry. That was it. In the
Yeah.
second season, I heard that you get as much as about 35% of the whole show. Only you get to see Henry. It's like all
Yeah.
about it's all basically about super powerful women bosses basically everywhere, just basically lady bosses everywhere, which is not even true in the books. And obviously, because they just completely diverge the books, it's all about this woke kind of nonsense. Just the story itself is just a complete convoluted mess. The showrunner does not have any clue what she's doing with it. She clearly
Mm,
is not into it. She doesn't like this lore. She clearly just there just to get her name out there because it's a very famous
mm.
project. It's just like these Star Wars projects that get like Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy assigned to these different people who just don't even like Star Wars. They don't even know what Star
Yeah.
Wars is about. Like
Yeah.
why? Why?
Yeah. It seems like Hollywood are just more about giving favors to their friends than,
It's
getting
like they're trying
passionate.
to take to their friends on Twitter rather than actually trying to succeed. And the other thing as well, of course, they're trying to pretty much deconstruct the culture and replace it with their own view of what the culture should be. But the
Yep.
problem is, well, that's the problem. They are finding out now that most people reject that culture.
Yeah. It's it's basically the way I see it. It's at least as far as Hollywood are concerned, it's just an attempt to recreate that same old bullying culture of, oh, don't do these things. They're a nerd. You have to consume my product, and if you don't consume my product and jump on my fads, then you're a dork and you should be ostracized. And they realize that doesn't work anymore. So it's like they're just jumping on moral causes in the hopes of, getting that old system back where they can shame people into buying their crap.
Yeah,
And again, it's not working because people
it's
know
the
what they
same
want.
model basically, but they just kind of use different substitute phrases and different contexts. But it's the same idea. It's basically shaming one portion of the of people for one thing, and trying to praise and reward uh, for basically something else. It's a bit like when we were at school and we were geeks, and when the geekdom was considered to be a not cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
The so-called popular guys were always being praised for being just the biggest assholes in the classroom, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yep.
was it. Like, and maybe because they were somewhat okay at playing sports, even though they would still not be the best. Because if the geeks really wanted to play well, and I've had that experience, I've seen people do that. They could kick their asses anyway if they really wanted to.
Yep. That's right. That's how it went down. But yeah, and you see as well, in terms of like the woke culture and stuff, it's like ironically the most obviously racist, producers. Like it was a recent thing with that stage play made um, movie, one musical Downtown Story or whatever it's called, where it was Spielberg and he kept calling Latin American and Hispanic people Latinxes or Tinxes or whatever, or that
Oh,
which is like,
the,
and
the,
then
the,
how do
it's the
you like,
new is this new abbreviation that they came up with because they think that it sounds more woke and more progressive or something like that. I think that's what it was, isn't it? Something like
yeah, and
that.
it's like,
It's just so dumb.
and yeah, and it's like there's like a big backlash, and they say no, we don't like being called that. Please stop. And like, would
Yeah.
you have? And so yeah, and it's like, so it's obviously tokenistic. It's obviously just put on for marketing, and they insert these basically inserts, just to show, oh yeah, we have a person who's from this ethnicity, we have a person from this sexuality. We just throw them in, and then say, oh, and then they can have an excuse as to tell investors why it fails if they happen to not be good at making a movie. And I don't want to say that that's the case, and that's the worst part about it is it starts to malign people that aren't white, in movies, and then people start thinking, oh, they put them in because they wanted that, to get to audiences on Twitter. And it's like, yeah, and that's going to probably be a consequence of this, is that people are going to be suspicious every time someone who's not white appears in a movie now, because they made it purposely tokenistic so they can say,
You
yeah,
are
you better watch
basically saying it's like you guys, over there, you're telling me that yeah, we should have more, different variety of ethnicities. Okay, I'm fine with that. Not that we didn't have that already. I mean, come on.
Mm.
Are we gonna disrespect Blade, Spawn, all of these Bruce Lee
Yeah.
films, Jackie Chan films, Hong Kong
Yeah.
cinema that's been there for ages before the whole diversity talking points even began first,
Mm.
like all that stuff. I've been already watching all that stuff for ages before they first started coming up with it. That's why to me it sounds like it's an insult to my intelligence, because I've been watching like all these different movies ages ago. Like there's lots of romantic comedies that actually star exclusively, African Americans or black people. Some really good movies as well, by the way. Like so many funny ones. Like they have like Jamie Foxx in them. They have like different other ones like Maurice Chestnut. Like all of those. Or what about the other one? Well, it's technically, you could say it's like a drama, if you will. Boys in the Hood that Ice Cube produced, with himself and Maurice Chestnut and the other Cuba Gooding Jr. Those guys. There's so many films like this, or Friday anthology. Like there's so many. I can keep going, and or a Rush Hour series, Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker. How is that not a
Mm.
good movie with
Yeah.
main characters that are, what I mean? But the whole point is that when these movies were made, it wasn't focused on that. It was just
Yeah.
mainly trying to tell you a funny story, and it kind
Mm.
of happened that these characters were of this sense, and because the way they were playing their roles fit their cultural background so well, as in the movie, and their characters
Mm.
fitted so well, it resonated and it made a very good impact, and that was great. It wasn't forced. Or how
Yeah.
about even though The Last Samurai, it's a very vaguely based on a true story, like the real
Vaguely, yeah.
story is based around the Satsuma Rebellion, which basically was led by a character completely differently named from the real. Yeah, I mean, the real character was completely different. His name was Saigo Takamori. He was not the same guy Katsumoto from the Tom Cruise's film. And Tom Cruise's character was not an American. He was, I think, either French or from Netherlands. I can't remember exactly.
Pretty sure it's
Maybe it
French.
was, I think it was French, yeah. But the whole point is that the general gist was very similar, but they told a very beautiful story. It had a good philosophical aspect to it. It had some exaggerations, of course. It had some wrong, maybe, assumptions about Japanese culture in some cases that I could
Mm-hmm.
think of, but
Yep.
it didn't particularly, it wasn't particularly, at least the way I saw it, I didn't think it was particularly disrespectful. It might have just gotten a few things wrong, but it wasn't
Oh, it
disrespectful.
did. It did.
And
One really big difference is that at the time, the traditional Japanese armies actually already had rifles and guns and all the modern technology that the rest of the world had. It's just
exactly,
they
yeah, it's
had
just that, but yeah,
the Prussian army that came in to train the new Imperial
yeah.
army basically had better military organization. That's pretty much why they won. They won because they brought pretty much the same equipment against them, maybe slightly better because it was,
But they
they
also
were.
had a better support because prior to what happened, and this is one of the things that I don't think the movie addresses, was that in real life, Saigo Takamori was the one who actually led the rebellion prior against the shogunate and overthrew the shogunate. So
Mm.
the shogunate lost their power now, and then what happened was that because they didn't have this kind of, you know, might and force behind them, because shogunate got disintegrated, so they were just basically a war band, pretty much at that point. They were a war band against an army. You know, that's what it was. That's why they lost. It's not because they were worse or better. It's just that they just weren't really on the same level anymore to fight with somebody who's like a professional standing army. And
Mm.
while if the shogunate was still around, you could have argued maybe, but that was no
Yeah.
longer the case. How convenient, of course, for the imperial army to basically then eventually be like, yeah, by the way, we just want to be done away with the feudal system altogether. So,
Mm-hmm.
samurai, you should take a hike. And they'll be like, I need the fuck, basically.
Yeah. No. Maybe. So pretty much it. Pretty much how it went down. And the fact is, at that time, probably starting to diminish. I mean, obviously because they lost, but samurai were still considered very, formidable enemies to go against, even with technology. Because one, they also had the technology as well. They were using it themselves. It's just that they didn't have the organizations with their armies, and they didn't have, as you said, the
Yeah,
sport. It's
you also
it's
need to
like
bear in
the
mind there's a lot of other things that you have to understand when you talk that they didn't fully get extinguished. There were a lot of samurai who actually joined the imperial new
Mhm.
uh, regime, and they just simply relinquished their noble status, if you will, and became regular citizens. But later, they still were recognized as belonging to certain clans, like their clan heritage was still allowed to be preserved. Also,
Yep.
Saigo Takamori, after being killed, he actually was pardoned by the emperor and was turned into a national hero who actually was considered to be a symbol of, like Japanese, valor and bravery or whatever it is. It was. He's got like statues almost like in every park or something like that in Japan or so here. I know that there are a couple of parks in Tokyo that still have his statues there, and so and also some clans are still around officially. They still have members ongoing. The famous Uesugi clan from back in the days from Sengoku Jidai, the famous Uesugi Genshin, and being one of the prominent figures. Their clan is still around.
Wow.
So there's many other ones. In fact, there's one of the Russian political figures, and she's also like a journalist and just generally a political figure, if you will. She's both a commentator, but she used to also be an active figure who was trying to run for, like, the presidential post back in the days in the 90s, especially. She's a half Japanese, half Russian woman. Her name is Irina Hakamada, and she got her surname from her father, obviously. And her father's line actually belongs to one of the daimyos from one of the samurai clans, whose name I cannot remember anymore. So it's quite interesting. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
amazing.
as Ian Malcolm says, there it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of
But yeah,
feels
the,
like
the whole
this.
point about this movie itself is just that, it still wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't rubbing anything in your face too much. It was still very nice. They really were just telling you and showing you the story. They weren't trying to make Tom Cruise's character out to be the savior, if you will. They
Mm,
weren't but they also weren't trying to make anyone else to be a particular hero. They were just showing you different angles of how different characters represented different problems, and how they were helping each other to solve it. Like, for example, Tom Cruise's problem was that he was ashamed of his, military past deeds that he did, and Katsumoto's character helped him to embrace it and just accept it and move on, and become be to be proud warrior, if you will. He kind of awakened him, introduced him to that kind of philosophy of thinking. Be like, don't boast, killing them, but just be proud of being, a warrior. You know what I mean, like that sort of thing.
mm,
And the same could be said about, especially when Tom Cruise's character was also teaching them a little bit of more conventional, approaches, and maybe help him to be a bit more pragmatic at times, because obviously he needed to understand that his enemies were not going to be using the same code of honor, if you will, or ideas that they were
mm.
going to be looking at it. They were going to be playing dirty, so they needed to adapt to it. And I like when when he was talking about the references of the Spartan warriors of Thermopylae. If you remember, there was a scene about that where Tom Cruise's character was telling Katsumoto about it, and they were talking about how they managed to, hold a choke point. So it didn't
Oh,
matter how many people were coming; they just kept hammering them, basically. And and then what happened was, when before they made their charge, Katsumoto says, "So what happens to the warriors at Thermopylae?" And then Tom Cruise just kind of smiles, like grins, like this kind of proud face, and he says, "Dead to the last man." And then Katsumoto just kind of like goes like, "Yeah, okay, let's go, let's fight,"
yeah.
So that was kind of one of those scenes that I think was one of the most badass scenes in that time period in the cinema as well. Like it was just showing how they were just willing to be like, yeah, fuck it, let's go, like let's do it. We're dead anyway, so why not? So, and the other ones that were really good, and Rush Hour trilogy. I like to use this as an example because that movie went in such territories, especially when in the first film, like how always everybody is like panicking. I don't want to say it because I don't know how YouTube is going to react to it, but the N word, I will just refer to it the N word. I don't mind saying it, to be honest. I don't give a fuck. But I have many friends who don't care either. Like from black people. I'm not going to go and spam it, obviously, because I'm not an idiot. But I mean, generally speaking, when you're doing things like singing rap songs, like when I do it with my friends, who are black, they don't mind me doing that. They don't care because it's a fucking song. Who cares? Because I'm not saying that, oh, you stupid. You know what? It's like I'm just having fun with a song, and they're sitting there doing it with me and supporting me in it. So what's the problem, right? And but the thing is, like with Jackie Chan's character, he had to use it as well because that's what made the scene funny. But he was like,
Yeah.
"What's up? What's up, Mike?"
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was
and that's because, but that's the contextual thing as well. Because prior to that, Chris Tucker's character said, "Okay, don't do anything. He said, "Do as I do." Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And that
do.
was a
And you know what?
cultural
And the first thing he did, he
yeah.
walks into the place, he walks into the bar, and he says, "What's up, Mike?" So what this guy thinks, he's like, okay, do as he does, okay. What's up, Mike? Because he saw that they positively responded. He doesn't know what that even means.
That's right.
So, and then he ends up
that's happened
almost
a few
getting
times in real life, actually.
What's that?
It's happened a few times in real life in Australia where, like, have people, because we have, a lot of people from China and Japan living, especially in Sydney, and a lot of people in Australia, either are racist or just like to swear a shitload, and in a lot of cases where there was like someone complaining about someone else, usually of a different race, to his friend who's from Asia, and that person from Asia didn't realize that he was basically just making a giant slur of that other person, so he just walks to the person he said before and just says it straight to his face, thinking that's just a matter-of-fact way of talking, addressing someone. And so the other guy found out and had to quickly pull him back and apologize to the other person. And so, it was a mistranslation, sorry.
But that's the problem, though. If people really get glued too much to this politically correct nonsense and just cannot simply just let it go and stop just being so freaking triggered about it.
And here's an example.
It's one of the many examples that I've heard as well. And I mean, I'll tell you what. Words only have as much power as you give them. I don't care what you have experienced in that sort of context. Words simply just cannot hurt you. I got called many things. I got told many things. I mean, whatever. There are many other guys I know who are of different like ethnicities. They get called all different things. And I can tell you the way they respond to it, it's very simple. Dude, well, you saying this about me doesn't tell me anything new. It tells me what you are like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's and that's like something, a message I tell as many people as I can. A person's attitude towards you doesn't reflect on you. It reflects on them, especially if they say you racist shit to your face or try and denigrate you or anything. That just says shit about them and their attitudes. And actually, I'll probably have to bounce soon, but that actually is something I wanted to bring up. Probably one of the best movies that talk about racism and how bad it is Blazing Saddles.
Which one? Which one?
Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks.
Okay, I'll have a look at that one. I haven't seen it.
If
you haven't, okay. Have you seen American History X as well?
No, I haven't. I've heard of it. Okay, I heard it's good though.
You watch American History X as well. So I need to watch this one, and you need to watch the American History X.
Got it.
Because this is also very good in this sort of way. It really, really deconstructs the whole idea, and it does really develop the characters very well to the point where you can understand how the journey started, and it really just like it's not even trying to say is it the white man bad, is the black man good, like this. It doesn't do that nonsense. it just really shows you how both of these sides, from characters from both sides, they experience different, you know ways of how they think, and how it changes gradually as they get more accustomed to understanding what their own individual views on the problems are. It's like what they think is the problem is the biggest thing. Then they realize that this other guy has a thing and he thinks the same way about his problems. And they kind of just come together about it and talk it out over time. And but that's a very, very brief description because I don't want to spoil it. But
Well,
you'll be
with
in for a very interesting surprise on that movie.
with Blazing Saddles, it's a comedy. And it is like just the no fucks given kind of comedy where
Yeah.
it's set in the Wild West, and there's this town that keeps getting attacked by bandits, and this is not a spoiler because it is revealed at the start. And the corrupt governor is actually sending the bandits to attack the town because he wants it demolished so he can build a railway or a factory there or something. And so they demand a new sheriff because the old one got killed by the bandits, and so he decides to basically piss them off by nominating a black guy who was about to execute for trying to escape from his slavers to be their new sheriff. And this is like a super racist town. They just, say shit to this poor guy right to his face. And he's the protagonist. The sheriff is the new sheriff Bart. And he's fantastic. And basically everyone's being a dick to him all the time. And he's basically having to solve all their problems. But it's such a beautiful film. And it's just like, and it would never have been allowed to be made today because it's not politically correct. It is just the most politically incorrect comedy I've ever seen in my life. It is just
It's usually the best ones as well.
To the brim of racism, but it's like from the point of view of the guy who takes it. And it's not like the way racism is depicted today, where it's like, the super angry, screamy guy. It's like just normal, gollygood country folk just basically being a dick to him, and he's just has to do his job. But he's like, he basically totally nails it, the whole thing. He's like kicks ass, and it's so good. And it's like he figures out all these problems. He figures out, basically has to save these idiot townspeople from themselves. But it's so well done, just the way it's done, and everyone should absolutely see it. It is absolutely a work of art. It's
I mean, definitely. It's these movies like of these days, of old, if you will, when they were making them back then, they really had a lot of substance. And I mean, you really felt like after watching one of these films, like you had so much on your plate to digest. It was so. Sometimes, in fact, the American History X, I had to watch it several times just to kind of make sure I didn't miss parts because it was just so crucial to see every little detail, the framing of the dialogue and things like that. Then, of course, after the 90s, when I moved to Britain, and then I rewatched the film in English once I became a bit more fluent in English, because I needed to make sure that the context wasn't lost in translation, because a lot of it was translated in Russian when I first watched it in school, because that film was out first when I was still in my high school, and I had to watch it with a Russian dubbing. So obviously, a lot of things would have been slightly missed out because of the language-related context, and the rhetoric. And I'm glad I rewatched it later in English as well. That was really gave me a bit of a more, depth perhaps to the uh, just to mentality and views of all the characters who were trying to, like, I could say this much: characters in American History X, the main ones, at least the primary ones, the ones that we actually get to explore anyway, they all come from a place where they just really been dealt a very bad hand, and I mean literally, like that's how it looked to me. That's what I saw from it. They just really got so unlucky on both sides, like the neighborhoods they lived in, the sort of trauma they experienced as young people, which in turn, you know, and obviously there's also this thing that one of the like say for example one of the black characters, he was mostly antagonistic because he's brought up maybe to believe that, oh yeah, like remember that these you see these white people, they always are on top of you, like you can, unless you have to always go extra mile to be equal to them, not just do what you do without thinking about it. So there's like obviously this side, so he gets the propaganda from that side. Then the other kid, like he's like, oh yeah, like a thugs from a black neighborhood killed my father when he was on duty, so now I'm gonna just go and basically kill all black people because of some idiots who did something horrible, you know,
Mm.
because, well, when you are at that age, when you are so kind of
Impressionable, yeah.
impressionable, yeah, you don't think that it's just these people who are the bad people. It hasn't got, it's not because all of them are like that. It's just because these particular people were those kind of people and they did what those kind of people normally do. you know, thugs thugs be thugging basically. That's what
Mm,
happens.
yeah.
It's got nothing to do with their skin color or anything like that. I mean, I'm telling this, to audiences who are watching. I am an Armenian who grew up in 90s Russia. In 90s Russia, we didn't have black people there, and there were plenty of thugging going on regardless. So, like, you know what I mean? It has nothing to do with black or white at all. It's got everything to do with what's happening in different in society at certain time period. And that's it may be related to different things, of course, but in Russia it was related to just basically the state basically fallen. You know, that's what it was, and it didn't matter if you were Armenian, if you were, from Kazakhstan, or if you were a Russian or Ukrainian. Everybody was just doing what they could do, and most of it was thugging. So it's just kind of how it was. So it didn't matter to anyone, nobody cared. So, and yeah, you ended up with people who would just do bad things. So that's what it was.
Yeah, and traumatic experience is always going to stick more distinctly, and people are going to see more patterns in that because when you think about it, when someone's minding their own business, you don't notice them. You don't notice a
No,
person minding their own
no.
business. You notice the person who, attacked you or demand your wallet, and that's basically going to where your mind starts forming the stereotypes, and that's an unfortunate part of life. And I think it probably doesn't help, with like ghettoized, fragmented neighborhoods. Because I grew up in like a neighborhood where there was like a huge, most of the people were either going to be Caucasian or Asian ethnicity, and so you don't really think anything of it because it's just such a normal part, and it's because it was such a nice neighborhood to be in. You don't really think about it that way. I mean, it's only it's usually like in other areas, it might be different. Who knows how it goes? But yeah, yeah, experiences, I think, growing up can really change how a person perceives other people because it's even psychological. It's like the other race effect. If you don't grow up with certain ethnicities, that's when people stereotype someone, or they look, people, they think other people look the same. It's because of
Mhm.
lack of exposure. Because when you're growing up, your mind learns to read different facial features, different, and just understand different people when you're growing up. But if you don't get that close, socially, it doesn't happen. And if the only social interactions are bad, if it's like a really, nasty neighborhood or a society that's, fragmented or, from political breakdowns, that's kind of the thing you get.
Yeah, and the other thing important to understand in this is that uh, these problems are not exclusive to the ethnicities. These problems
No.
usually, like any person of any ethnicity, if they happen to find themselves in this kind of bad environment and neighborhood, they will be
Same.
easily exactly the same, and that's what we've seen as well. Eminem, as an example, he's basically your typical white American guy, if you will, white quote unquote, because obviously, as a person who lives in Eurasia, when I look at the term white, it means a completely different thing and a
Mm.
much more complex term than when Americans say white. It's a different thing. So I need American
Yep.
viewers here to understand that, to make sure that we don't confuse this. But the whole point I'm making here is that he grew up in a neighborhood. I'm not saying it's because it was a black neighborhood. It was a problematic neighborhood like many others when it comes to the hood generally. It doesn't matter who you are. There are plenty of other peoples, like, there are plenty of Chinese people, for example, or like Latin Americans who grow up in the hood too. There's plenty of them. It's not just black people who live in the hood. I want people to kind of really understand that as well. It's not just that. And what they all have in common is that these neighborhoods, they shape a certain mentality and way of thinking that is usually not productive. It's actually counterproductive, and it doesn't encourage you to do well at school, for example. It doesn't encourage you to because it's considered not to be cool or whatever the shit. There's like stigma somehow attached to it, and you know, speaking good English or whatever your native language is in a place. Because obviously, if I'm talking about the hood, the hood is not an exclusive concept just to the North America. It's actually, well, as I said, 90s Russia had a lot of hoods, and
And
I've been
Australia.
well, Australia as well, Latin,
Yeah.
America as well. They had a lot of hoods. So
Mm.
obviously, whatever it is that your native language is in that place, you will find that people tend to speak a slightly broken slang version of that language rather than speaking a more literate version of that language. And
Mm.
it's also true for Russian, where I grew up in 90s of Russia. People were not talking like normal people, like Russian speakers would normally talk. They were talking very kind of like this. That's usually the kind of mannerisms you were seeing. So
Yeah, and I can actually say same thing in Australia, and a lot of our hood areas are overwhelmingly Caucasian. It's definitely not an ethnicity centric thing. It just happens to
yeah,
be the neighborhood and the nature, and then kind of even areas that, in many ways, I'd say are pretty nice. Like in terms of the climate, the kinds of attitudes of people that live in it actually mold it, because you get places like in the sort of western far frontiers of Sydney. Sydney's an east side suburb, so the western southern
yeah.
areas are usually where it gets rough. A lot of those areas, it's like it'd be nice places to live if people didn't keep throwing the garbage on the road and it wasn't such a high,
Yeah. Oh my God,
rate of.
garbage is a problem here as well in London. London has become so much dirtier over the last few years.
Mm,
So
yeah.
much dirtier and more. And I keep hearing all the time knife crimes all the time.
Mm. And in the areas I mentioned, it was a nice until you saw the garbage, until you saw the two 13-year-old kids pushing a pram and smoking. And it's crime. It's pretty heavy crime as well. It's bad. It's like that same kind of, thing with the voice difference. It's sort of like the try to sound tough voice. And I think they're all learned. And it's kind of sad, but
Because that's
um,
all they know. They
mm,
don't know any different. And whenever they get told something different to them, that looks like it's alien because because what they've learned already prior to that is what became their culture, basically. That's what
yep.
they think is the culture.
And you get a lot of parents kids whose parents might have been in jail and they don't trust, the teachers or the police and so that kind of cycle, keeps
It's
cycling
like, yeah,
through.
it doesn't break. It's a cycle. Yeah, and the problem is that the only way to break the cycle is to take matters into your own hands and do this. And many people, they don't realize they have that power to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
And especially in stressful times like the past few years, it's hard to keep your wits about you and try to just keep put everything back into perspective, and try and evaluate how to just you know get out of a situation without perpetuating the cycle. And I think anyway, I think I probably better bounce now. But
yeah,
yeah, I
and
guess that's probably a good takeaway
we've
message.
covered a very diverse variety of topics during the stream. It seems for these 2 hours, so it's been fun.
Yeah, so
Um,
everyone, Merry Christmas, and maybe if it's, kind of a tough time in wherever you live in the world, I guess try to keep it together as long as possible because, things will in one way or another get better. And even if you have to try to find a productive way, a constructive way to make it better, I guess that's just what everyone in a different circumstance has to work towards, whether it's easy or whether it's hard. So
I would say my message would be in this case is try to be as proactive as you can for yourself.
yep, and be
Don't
kind to everyone else.
yeah, don't rely on anyone else. Do what you gotta do and make your own wishes. You know, Christmas and New Year's wishes come true. Don't expect them to come true on their own or expect others to deliver it to you. Don't rely on your parents, government, whatever else. Like, it's all about you, basically. It's all about you.
Yep.
You do what you can do, and most best you can do is keep your integrity together and keep your head intact. And don't forget about the heart too, because, well, you know, we gotta try to be kind too sometimes. You know, we can always be assholes anytime, but we gotta remember to be kind as well sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of goes a long way as well. So,
yeah, well said.
all right, so here we go. That's a very nice way to finish this anyway. So, Merry Christmas
Thanks,
and
Lloyd.
awesome art for, you know, paleo art, Harry. So you've been on fire lately as well on this front, so I can definitely agree with that.
Cheers. Yeah, more
Okay.
stuff will come soon.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that and we'll keep up with the news. Anyways, thanks everyone for joining the stream. It's been quite a bit of a ride. We will probably, I don't even know. I wanted to do some like New Year resolutions, but I guess everybody's too tired already. It's 2 hours, so I don't know if I'm able to fit another one in someday. We might do something like that prior to New Year's, perhaps, if I can, or if not, then maybe we'll do something else if I have time. Again, work is unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen, so it's always one of those things. So, in any case, thanks for coming, guys. Merry Christmas once again. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your lovely environment at home. And for those who are getting up tomorrow for work, good luck here. Anyways, ciao, ciao. Harry, thanks for coming as well. Yeah, and nice hat.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers, mate. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.